Welcome to Life on Maui. I'm your host, Steven Freid. Our show for today is going to be a hot topic. Normally, I don't do hot topics, but this is going to be a hot topic. And I'm going to be talking to someone, a friend. We've become friendly. We did a show specifically on him a few years back. And he's a wonderful artist. He teaches art classes here on Maui, has a beautiful studio. And we are going to be talking about the two subjects that I guess are the hottest topics, which is politics and religion. So just know that we're going there and enjoy the ride. He's very well informed on these subjects, very well read, and that's why I wanted to have him on the show. So our guest for today is Semyon Bilmes.
Yes. Hi, Steve.
Semyon. So here we are, and we've been having wonderful conversations at the Cove at Baldwin Beach.
Yes.
And the subject matter is very pertinent. It's as relevant as today. I mean, right off today's headlines. And so let me just jump in and say, one of the things that really got my attention was you talking about how the Muslim culture is more and more affecting Europe and what's going on in Europe and the whole dynamic of politics and everything else. Could you talk about what's happening in Europe right now with the Muslim culture?
Yes, sure. Well, there was for a long time, there was immigration, Muslim immigration to Europe. A lot of it has to do with the persecution, wars in Muslim countries, and there are many people, many Muslim, were immigrating as refugees. They were basically refugees. And after a while, it became pretty big number of the refugees, and in Germany, in Britain, France, the Scandinavian countries. So gradually it became pretty big number of Muslims, and since Muslims do profess Sharia law, and that was especially, it's professed by the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
And Sharia laws have been implemented in a number of countries, like in England, for example. They have over 60 Sharia courts. Now, for those who don't know what Sharia law is, it's just basically Islamic law. It's what Quran teaches that how Muslims should follow.
Right. So they have completely there's the court system, and then they have their own court system.
Correct. And that is one of the biggest problems that happens right now in Europe, is that when Muslims are asked which law they would obey if they contradict one another, they said, most of them, in fact all of them, are saying that Sharia law, it supersedes any secular law in any country. Now, there are right now, they're creating small number of Sharia courts and also Sharia militia that now walks on the streets of European countries and trying to enforce Sharia law.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There are various incidents where that happened, and now on top of that, what happens also in Europe is that there's about 80% of those people, Muslim people, are on welfare system, which means that it's a huge burden on the European communities.
Right.
Because just in France, officially, there's about 9 million. And unofficially, there's much more, because there's many illegal refugees.
Right.
Now, it is creating a big burden, especially taking into consideration the fact that according to Sharia law, Muslim can have up to 4 wives.
Right.
Now, since in Europe they do not recognize polygamy, but Sharia courts do, so what Muslim men, quite many of them do, in fact, in Germany it's 30% of Muslims there have polygamous families. Now, how they do that, though, is they go to Sharia court, they get married, and then the woman becomes, according to the European law, is a single mother since they have children, and a lot of times they have 8, 10, 12 children.
I see.
And they could have 4 wives. Each one can have up to 10 children or more.
Right.
And each single mother gets welfare support. And so is the men a lot of times.
Okay.
And so that creates a huge burden.
So I can see that aspect. I mean, yeah, that's good to illuminate that aspect. I guess there could be some correlations drawn in our country, but I think what's more intense or more pressing is there is, from what you were explaining to me, there's really a desire for the Muslim, I don't know if they're extremists, I want you to help clarify this. There's a real intention to take over. I mean, this is really the thing. To me, okay, they're a burden on the system. I understand that, the Sharia court, but isn't there something that is built into their belief system that they feel very justified in taking over and imposing their will on others? Isn't that very much a part of what it is? And Europe is so close to us. I mean, we're all immigrants, so that's where we came from. Okay, so this is of concern if that's the case. I want to hear you elaborate on that.
Well, yes, I would like to say that we're not all immigrants from Europe. There are immigrants in America from all over the world.
Semyon is a Russian immigrant, so you value freedom greatly.
Yes, very much so.
And you're big. You know what it's like to not have freedom, and you know. So that's why I feel like you in particular. I mean, you've lived in the U.S. for 30 years, I think.
Yeah, 34.
But you grew up there, and you know what it's like to not have rights. So I'm listening closely to you. Yeah.
Not only did I grow up in the Soviet Union, I grew up in a Republic of Azerbaijan, which is a Muslim republic. And I grew up there. I was born and grew up there, and lived there for almost 24 years. I'm very familiar with the culture. I also lived in Turkey for almost a year with my family. And I have absolutely no problem with people. And Muslim people are wonderful people. And when I lived back in Azerbaijan, most of my friends were Azari, which were, you know, again, it was more of a secular Muslim place because we lived under Soviet Union, which did not tolerate religion much. Any religion, for that matter.
Right.
But culturally, again, Azaris were, before the Soviet Union came in, it was Muslim country or Muslim republic, and it was it was Shiite Muslims. So the traditions are very, very strong there. Now, I visited Azerbaijan in 2004, and I was shocked to see that it's been turning more and more into a very Islamic country. I started seeing women walking around with a chadras, which is like a burqa type or a hijab, and there is I mean, it was a day and night after 20 years that I haven't seen.
And where you grew up is very close to Iran, you said?
Yes, it borders Iran and Iraq. And as a matter of fact, when I was living there, I was watching Persian television, and before 1979, there was Western movies. They had Beatles, they had Chris Christopherson, they had British movies, and so forth. And then one night after the Khomeini took over, and I remember that very vividly, I remember that on the screen there was nothing but a mullah. I was just praying, and that was it. That was the end of it. Now,
So there was that point in time where you personally just saw the whole thing change. Before, there was movies
Yes.
and then no more. There was just the mullahs doing
That's
the
it.
chantings.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your question about this this movement, it is very true. Actually, Islam means submission. It means submission. The word Islam means submission to Allah. And what Muhammad, the prophet of Allah, was basically saying in the Quran, that the whole world must be under Allah.
We believe that the Sharia will dominate. The Sharia will be implemented worldwide.
So Islam by itself proclaims the world domination to begin with. It's just basically anybody who truly believes in Islam believes that that should be the future of the world. There's no question about that.
I see.
Now, moderate Muslim, what they call, they might believe that too, but they're not active about it. In other words, the people just living their life, they go to work, they're trying to enjoy their life as much as they can.
Yeah, and I saw a lot. I just came back from Malaysia, and that's a lot of what I saw.
Yeah. But unfortunately, history shows that silent majority does not prevail. A vocal minority does. And what happens is it's all over the world right now, we see huge radicalization and basically sticking to the 7th century concept, which is what Quran is. Muhammad was living in the 7th century, and that's where the whole conquest of the world started. Muhammad took, conquested the whole entire Middle East, and then the Islam conquested the whole entire North Africa, huge parts of Europe as well. It actually ended up coming to Austria, Vienna, and that's where it was stopped. Most people do not understand that,
So
Islam was really, yes.
When you say Muhammad, you mean when he was still alive this was going on?
Yes, Muhammad was the beginning of the conquest of Muslim conquest. Now, he passed away, he died, and then it was continuing after him. That's when the big split between Shia and Sunni started, because I don't want to get into the details of that,
Right.
but it's they became different sects. But nevertheless, the concept of conquest remains pretty much the concept of Islam. Now, Islam subdivides the world into two categories. One is Dar al-Islam, which is the land or the home of Islam, and another one is Dar al-Harb, which is the land of the war. Harb means war. And ultimately, the difference is that anything that is not under Islam is therefore under war with Islam.
معنى هذا إن الإسلام سيعود إلى أوروبا مرة أخرى. هل من ضرورة الفتح أن يكون بالحرب؟ لا، ليس من الضرورة. هناك فتح سلمي، ولكن طبعا لابد للمسلمين أن يتحركوا حتى يفتحوا هذا العالم.
So the conquest has been going on for many, many years. At some point, it was Arabic conquest. Now, the Ottoman Empire, which was Turkish Empire, took over. They fought and they won. They were also Muslim. They actually continued the conquest, and the Ottoman Empire was one of the biggest empires ever.
And what did that include?
That included huge parts of Europe, all North Africa, and most of the Middle East. And it was in power for, and it did include Palestine as well. So it was in power for about 400 years, almost on the nose. And then in 1917, it's in the World War I, the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, collapsed under with fighting with the Allies, the Brits, the French, and after the war, they have been after they have been conquered, the Allies subdivided the Ottoman Empire into parts. That's where the countries came from, like Iraq, Iran. Before it was just, they were called sanjaks in Turkish, and that were just like areas of Turkish Empire, which they didn't have any countries. So the subdivision of Iraq and Iran and all of the North Africa, all of the subdivisions, including Palestine, were done by the Allies, and they had mandate system, and that was basically created by the League of Nations. So the mandate system was that French could have their mandate, and they had mandate over, let's say, Syria and Lebanon, while British mandate was in Iraq, and it was in parts of the North Africa, and so forth, and Palestine. Now, the conquest, again, at that point, sort of kind of stopped. But what started happening right now, and this is what is alarming.
I do want to come up to now.
Yes.
This is a good history. And also, another thing that really, there's a few other points I really want to bring in, and we can bring them in whenever we do. I want to bring in the points of the way it is now globally. You had mentioned that India and China are very aware of the of the Muslim culture, and I want to hear from you about their response, because they're two big cultures that traditionally we haven't necessarily been that close with.
Yes.
And also, I want to talk about something that you have said a number of times, how you're the treatment of Muslim women, which I think people are aware of, but you can't talk too much about that.
Well, I don't know if many people actually are aware of what's going on with that. Now, specifically, you mentioned India and also Japan
And China.
China. Chinese right now are they just executed about, I don't know, close to 40 of Uyghur Muslim that are have created some terrorist activities there. Well, with China, it's pretty simple. I mean, they are at this point still totalitarian. They're pretty swift with that. So, starting Muslim revolution in China is not it's not going to be that fast, at least. But what's happening in other countries is different, specifically Muslim countries. Because if you really look at what's been going on, if you compare Iran...
Do you mean India, for example?
No, India is not Muslim country.
No, it's Hindu, but
yeah,
but they're very aware of...
Well, they were fighting with Muslims for a long time. That was the creation of Pakistan and Bangladesh. But the problems right now are... Actually, the biggest problems are the Muslim countries. If you actually look at what's going on around the world, I mean, look at Syria right now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Look at Lebanon. You know, most people do not have any clue what's going on in the world because media does not talk quite a lot. In fact, media, I believe, is extremely skewed. It's just not quite showing what is a disastrous situation in a lot of places in the world. Specifically, do you know what a Second Congo War is? Second Congo War?
No.
Well, Second Congo War just ended about 10 years ago, and the number of people that died in there is 5.4 million.
Wow.
And you never heard of it?
No, never heard of it.
Yeah, and so never did most Americans. and a lot of people around the world in Western Europe. The problem, and many more millions actually were just dispersed, refugees from Congo. Now what's going on in Sudan is absolutely disastrous.
In what way?
Well, the Muslim insurgency, I mean, the Islamists, well, we can call them jihadists. Some people call them jihadists for, you know, lack of a better term, simply because they jihad. There are many interpretations of that word, but that's specifically used by the terrorists, and specifically talks about one type of jihad, which is installation of Islam all over the world.
Yeah.
And so that creates in Sudan, in Mali, in Nigeria, and that Africa is suffering most from what's going on right now. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions already I've talked about, but there's also hundreds of thousands of people who were killed. The Christians, the Sudanese Christians were just completely slaughtered. It was absolute genocide. But, you know,
but we don't hear about it.
Nobody hears about it.
We don't hear about that.
The factions like Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram, and there are many of other factions there. Factions. They are installing terror. Now, what it means is just basically killing people, so they will be afraid, so they will be not resisting.
Right.
There's the whole idea of that much of a violence. Now, that's going on one side, and you can look into also into the countries that have Islam already as more or less stable society, such as Yemen, for example. But then you have jihadis that want to create more Sharia law in there. So they have a situation where you have secular Islamic states, like Turkey, for example. Turkey was, after the World War I, was basically saved from being subdivided by allies, by the Kemal Atatürk, who was, you know, the Turkey was, they're worshipping him. He's a great man. He was a secular man. He saved and he created modern Turkey. He changed the Arabic letters to Latin letters. He changed the language even. He cleaned it from Arabic and Persian influences, so it's pure Turkish language. And he created a very good secular state. He didn't allow religion to be in academia at all. They did not even allow people covering their heads.
Right. So the closest thing that we have to that is the separation of church and state.
Correct. And what happened now, even, you know, you have the Erdogan, who basically dismantled everything that was created by Atatürk. Right now, I was watching his speech, and I was absolutely shocked. It's not even close to what I thought. I thought, well, he is sort of kind of somewhat Islamist, but no, I mean, he is. He wants to turn this whole country, and he has aspirations of spreading the jihad.
Okay, so the thing is that really has gotten my attention. For whatever reason, I think we're, like you alluded to earlier, tend to be a little ignorant about what's going on in other parts of the world. Okay?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But when it starts coming to Europe, that really, it's closer to home for us. It's not Africa, it's not the Middle East. So this is very virulently spreading to Europe, from what you're saying. I mean, you've shown me some clips, and there's a lot of very fiery rhetoric, and there is a lot going on there. And I think pretty soon we also want to get into how you've gotten involved in studying the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Right. But
because that's, you know.
Let me tell you about the Europe right now. See, here's where it is really getting very, very insidious, and I would even say ingenious. What's happening is the Muslims that want to turn Europe into an Islamic caliphate, they're using two different tactics. One is basically using fear. So that's where violence is, and just pushing and forcing, and there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of very violent demonstrations.
So this is going on currently in Europe?
This is going on right now
all
in
over Europe.
There's much more to say, but I'm going to talk about it when we're going to talk about women, because I would like to cover that. You asked me, and I think it's important, women in Europe. But what they also do, they're using another tactic, which is using democracy, using democratic principles of freedom of speech, pluralism, peaceful assembly, the rights of religions, and so forth.
Right.
So what they're doing,
so they're using that to their advantage.
they're using that to their advantage. So
Right.
in Islam countries, you have no right of any other religions. You cannot build churches. You can, in fact, all the symbols of other religions are destroyed. You know, Taliban is a great example of that, when they were just basically blasted Buddhist statues. And but in Europe, they say, well, gee, you know, we demand the rights, and when they demand the rights, on one hand, and the Europeans basically being suckers, they try to grant them this right according to their democratic concepts. Well, then they're creating a Sharia law, and they say, we really don't care about your democratic laws. We actually care for Sharia law. So we superimpose Sharia law over your country's laws. So it is very, very tricky. And there is also such a concept in Quran, which is called taqiyya. And what it is, you're not only allowed, but you're also commanded to lie to non-Muslims if it's in a goal of supporting Islam. It's called taqiyya.
This is in the Quran?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of interesting things in Quran, and specifically talking about women. It ultimately, people using Quran, because you know, women in Muslim countries, they have to be, you know, basically it's what they also call as a woman female circumcision, but it's also, you know, in the Western world it's called female genital mutilation.
Right.
And what happens is that women are forcefully, you know, when they're girls, they basically going through clitorectomy.
Right.
And it's done a lot of times in a very horrible conditions, sometimes even by just a broken bottle.
Oh my God.
And it is it's very bad. It's, you know, a lot of women die from it too, and some suffer all the rest of their lives. Now, one of the reasons why that is that the women considered, according to Islam, basically seducers of men. The women are.
They shouldn't come to our beaches here.
Yeah,
Right.
No kidding, no kidding. They should not show their faces or their bodies to men, because men start thinking of sinful thoughts. So that's why men should not have any, by the way, according to Quran, sex with any woman unless he's married to her. So what happens in, let's say, Middle East or the Muslim countries is that because of that, the women they cannot have sex with men without marriage, but men has to get married, and men cannot, and poor men especially, cannot get married. They're poor. They cannot afford to have a wife. These wives, they don't go to work, so they have to support a family. So it happens, you cannot have a woman. You know, the prostitution is outlawed. You cannot have sex outside of marriage. You have incredible sexual frustration.
Right.
Incredible. You know, I remember when I lived back in the Soviet Union, even though that was more of a secular, but it had a secular country, but it had Muslim background in Azerbaijan, But we had international kind of a city. So we had Russians, we had Armenians, we had Jewish, Ukrainians, whatever. We had other people living there again, and that was easier because Azeri women you did not want to mess with, and so the Muslim men had a way to have sex. Because they were not really believers, they were just like secular Muslim. But in a Muslim culture, when you have actually Islamic cultures, you cannot have sex outside of marriage. So you have
there's a workaround then.
Yeah, and then what Islam promises is that if you die, then you get to heaven, and then you can have everything. You can have an orgy. You can have 72 virgins.
Right.
And you can have the rivers of wine. Actually, wine is forbidden under Islam.
Right.
But when you die, you can actually have rivers of wine.
Then you can enjoy yourself.
Then you can enjoy yourself.
Right.
So
then you can enjoy yourself when you die.
So basically, the whole concept
but here it's very graphic.
You have very limited, almost non-enjoyment for men nor women.
Yeah.
In Islamic culture. And the only promise that you have that when you can actually enjoy your life is when you die, especially for men.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why.
Well, for both men and women.
Yes, but you see, men has more motivation, and they are so sexually frustrated. They are not declitorized, which the clitoris is supposed to be one of the main organs for women to actually have orgasm.
Of course.
And so man is really forced to look in heaven for better life. So jihadists, they don't care to die.
I see where you're going.
They don't care to die. They want to die.
Right.
They say we love death more than you love life. That's what they proclaim. We love death. It's a death cult. Basically, that's what it is.
That's very important. Yeah.
So the thing is that when they, even the mothers believe that the son, the little kid, if he's going to die, he's going to go to heaven. And so they praise Allah when the kid has died. It is very difficult. It's impossible. I would submit to you that it is impossible for the Westerner to understand that. They think, well, all humans are the same. Every mother loves their children. Nobody would be able to believe otherwise. But it is not necessarily so. Love is a very different concept in Islam. In fact, love between men and women is something that you must understand is not an issue. It's not. It actually almost looked down upon, because men, first of all, with polygamy, it's instituted and it's allowed, so you don't have this personal, intimate relationship with one woman.
Right.
That you look at the woman just like somebody, like a cow that gives you kids. And when girl is born, according to Islam, in fact, the grandmothers and grandfathers, they start saying in the sort of like a traditional kind of chanting, oh, we have another woman, another girl came in. Why don't you go get yourself a jar and go to the sea and get yourself water, and then drown yourself in it. It's kind of a it's kind of a saying when they have a girl. In fact, in a lot of families there, girls looked upon by fathers as just something bad happened to our family. We have a girl.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, what you have is an honor killing, which again, West does not understand how you can kill your own daughters. But honor killing is very, very popular, and it came to Islamic communities in Europe. And only in Pakistan itself, you have about, just recorded by the one agency, the Islamic agency in Pakistan, that about 1,000 women get killed in honor killing. But they actually basing this on newspaper articles. But and they count, the announcement. Somebody dies, they put in newspaper, an honor killing. But it's much more than that, because a lot is not getting reported. But even in Europe, even in Canada, and right now in Australia, there's honor killing going on. And what it means, actually, what it means is if a girl, let's say, was seen with a boy,
Yes.
or the boy especially that is not a Muslim,
Yes.
which is, you know, in Europe, it's very tempting.
Well, that's one thing I really got warned about when I was in Malaysia is, yeah, I mean, they could get killed if I was to be with a Muslim woman.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So not only that,
Maybe
but
I would
the
be too.
honor killing is going on for that. Or for if a girl refuses, she's going to Western school, she doesn't want to wear a headdress. There are numbers of those girls that were killed as an honor killing, that she doesn't follow the laws of Sharia, of Islam. And also, anybody who changes the religion, according to Islam, if you become a Christian, for example, or a Jew, or whatever for that matter, death has to be upon you because you are the traitor of Islam, because you did not submit to Islam. Again, understand,
So again, that
Islam is submission. Everybody got to submit to it. So that is another thing. Now, plus, what's happening in Europe specifically is the Muslim men, again, sexually frustrated, not married, and not employed. They're raping the European women, considering them basically whores. They're not Muslim. They're not wearing the headdress. They're basically infidels.
Right.
And Islam allows having sex with infidel, slaves or the conquered ones. That's what it says. I think it's Surah 33 or something like that. So basically, you have a right to do that according to Islam, because they're nobody. They're not humans, because they're not submitted to Islam. And so right now in Norway, for example, Sweden, there's tons of documentations of that. It's just about 90% of rapes committed there is done by Muslim men. It's getting very, very ugly there. Now, what you see...
I do want to make sure we leave some time for talking about Israel-Palestine.
Certainly.
Yeah, because I know, we're covering...
Big subject.
We're covering a big subject, which has to do with what's going on with the world situation. And now, let's, if you want to say a little more to finish what you were thinking, but let's come to the Israel-Palestine conflict and how you got involved with researching that.
Well, this is a great question, because the reason why I got involved in all of this was that I had a conversation with my friend, a friend that I had here, a beach friend. And we started talking about Israel, and he said how horrible the Israel is, and how those Zionists are just this evil people that are oppressing the poor Palestinians. And I knew that wasn't the case. And so I was trying to explain this to him. He wouldn't listen. So I said, well, okay, you need facts, right? So let me get numbers. Let me get factual information. So I was studying and reading and trying to convey this to him. Well, he sort of kind of refused to look at the facts. I realized that, some people just convinced, and you cannot unconvince convinced. But I hope that there are people out there that do have open mind and do actually are interested in facts and truth.
Well, that's why we're doing this show today, by the way. It's not to try and convince people who are already set in their ways, even though that would be great. Just there's so many who don't really have information, and hopefully this will help elucidate.
So let me run really fast through that. Let me tell you that the whole Palestine concept is there was a land of Jewish people for thousands of years. Now, yes, granted, that's not necessarily the most important claim, but the fact of the matter is that yes, that was their land. They were conquered by Assyrians, by Babylonians, by Arabs, by Turks, and then finally by Brits. So it was a conquered land and was conquered by so many different people through so many years. Now, at the time when it was for like the last 400 years, it was under Turkish Ottoman Empire. It was not under Arabs. Now, it were Arabs that were living under Ottoman Empire in some of those areas, including Iraq, including what is common, known as Jordan right now. But believe it or not, the Jordan was part of Greater Palestine. And what happened was, after the World War I, the League of Nations have created a resolution and divided all of those parts with the British mandate, especially the Palestinian part, British mandate, and they divided it into two parts. One was the eastern Palestine, and another one was western Palestine. The separation was on the Jordan River. Now, eastern Palestine was eventually given. At first, it was actually promised to the Jews by Balfour Declaration, but then it was few years later, it was granted by League of Nations to the Arabs, to the Palestinian Arabs, and the Hashemites, who basically ruled over that area, were given the kingsmanship. So basically, it is the kingdom. So it was called. It was called Transjordan. It was Transjordan Kingdom at the time, and then they changed it into just Jordan, or Hashemite. I don't remember exactly the name of it. It was like Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan, and then they changed it to Jordan. But what it is, it's actually 65 to 70% Palestinian, because they were just population, Palestinian population there, Palestinian Arabs, and the other part was given to the Jews. Well, Arabs said, no way, we will not accept that, and so they did not accept that. Then by the time of 1947, it was already not a League of Nations. The United Nations became in power in 45, and then in 47, they said, okay, if you don't like this, why don't we just subdivide the rest of Palestine, which is what used to be a Judea and Samaria and Galilee. So it was subdivided into two parts. One for the Palestinian Arabs, which was Judea and Samaria and Gaza, and the other part for the Jews, so just Galilee and some other parts of western Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Arabs declined it. They said, no way. And they did not want to do that. Israel said, okay. I mean, the Jews, it wasn't Israel at the time, said, okay, we'll accept that. Thank you. We'll take this. Okay. We just want to have some land. Because after all this persecution, after the World War II, after so much of the Jews been suffering in so many places in the world, they said, well, fine, we just want to have our little piece of land where we can actually go to, and nobody is going to kill us. Nobody is going to mess with us. Nobody is going to pogrom us like it was in Russia and Ukraine and France. It's going to be something that we're going to basically have our own country. That's the Zionism. That's the whole Zionist idea. That's all they wanted, was just have their little piece of land. Mm-hmm. They've been accused of so many horrors of just trying to take over the world, when in fact, what's going on? What's taking over the world? I just told you.
Yeah.
But somehow the media constantly concentrates and demonizes Zionism, which has nothing to do with any of that. All they want is to have their little piece of land and just be left alone in peace.
Well, I think an important thing, this has come to my attention in our conversations, and it's amazing to me, is because liberal and New Age community in general would empathize with an underdog, what's perceived in this situation, it's perception that's, arguably just not true, is that Israel's the persecutor, and that Palestine is the victim, and so the liberals and New Age are siding with, to some great extent, the Palestinians, and it's inaccurate.
Let me address that.
Please do.
Thank you.
Please do.
What it is, first of all, the facts are that when after the proclamation of Israel in 1948, 5 Arab countries came and attacked Israel. 5 countries. Now, they thought and they told to the Palestinians, the Arab armies told them that they have to run away for about a week, because they're going to take over these Jews in a week. It's going to be over, and then they can come back. And that's well documented. I have seen videos. I've read the accounts of Arab accounts, historical accounts. That's exactly what happened. Now, they did flee. And what happened after that was that Israel won the war. Now, what also happened is that 140,000 of Palestinians did not flee. They stayed in Israel. Now, there are about 2 million of them, or close to 2 million. They are about 21% of Israel right now. They enjoy the democracy that it is in Israel. They enjoy every single right that Israeli does. They actually even join the army. They don't have to. They exempt from army because, according to Israeli law, they don't want to force people to fight their own brethren. But some of them do enroll, and quite a few of them, Druze, Muslim, enroll in the Israeli army, IDF army. They have 12 representatives in Israeli Knesset, which is their parliament. They had minister in Israel parliament, minister, was an Arab. They have anchors, television anchors, journalists, any other profession. They have Israeli passports. They are the people who are Israelis. They just happen to be Arabs.
Yeah.
And this whole boycott of Israel hurts them as much as everybody else. On top of them, they have Armenians, they have Druze, they have Circassians, they have Assyrians, they have so many Ethiopians, you name it. They have so many people that live in Israel as well. Now, the problem is that most people do not understand that having peace is not a part of Hamas. Let me read to you.
Yeah.
Let me read to you a quote. This is actually from Hamas charter. Hamas is a government of Gaza, right? This is the charter which has been there for quite a while, and this quotes Quran. What it says is this, quote, "The Hamas has been looking forward to implement Allah's promise, whatever time it might take. The Prophet, prayer and peace be upon him, said, the time will not come until Muslims will fight the Jews and kill them, until the Jew hide behind rocks and trees, which will cry, O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come on and kill him." Now, this is Quran. Quran has a lot of other things, but not very pleasant, neither for the Jews nor for anybody else, except for Islam. But this is in a charter of the Hamas, and not only that, so many peace talks, so many times where Israel offers them, well, just be there, just enjoy where you are, which is, that's what was designated to them by the United Nations Resolution 181 when they subdivided the land into 2 parts. Judea and Samaria, which we call West Bank right now, is the part that was given by United Nations to the Arabs. Well, they lived there. And it was annexed by Jordan, but then Arab countries were against Jordan annexing it. Because they said, no, we have to keep the Palestinians. In fact, the Arab countries never gave citizenship to Palestinian refugees that ran away to their countries, like Syria, for example, or Iraq. They did not give the Palestinians status. They kept holding them as refugees. So they call them refugees. Actually, according to the Refugee Agency of United Nations, the definition of refugee is when somebody crosses international border. And you cannot be occupied and refugee at the same time.
Right.
So if you're a refugee, it means you fled from your country into another country. But if you claim that this is your own land and you live on this land, you cannot be a refugee. Now what happens is there are billions and billions of dollars sent to what they say, these poor Palestinians, that actually the government of which, the leadership of which, scams the money. They take the money, they pocket the money. There is so much information about the billionaires that actually it created. And some of this money that's coming as an aid to Palestinian people, some of them comes from Israel as well, quite a lot of it actually, goes to building of the tunnels, the terror tunnels, and the weaponry, and basically it goes to assaulting Israel, the terrors, the bombs.
So, okay, so a point to underscore here is the fact that Israel as a country is tolerant. It's very tolerant. It has in its government bodies, it has, it's tolerant of...
It's the most democratic place in the Middle East, period. I mean, women have rights, gay have rights. They hang them in Iran. They hang them in they lash them and kill them in Syria. You cannot compare the rights that people have in Israel. And you cannot blame Israel for fighting back. All they want is just defend their own existence. They actually purchased this land. If you actually study how the land was purchased by many people who Zionists believed that we have to buy it in the 19th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was, you can look at the documents that how much land was purchased. It is something that was granted by the international legal body. And all they want is just live in peace.
So a perception in the media is they call Israel an apartheid state.
Well, it's absolute nonsense. I mean, it is as nonsensical as to call Sweden an apartheid state.
How do you draw that correlation?
Because they have very similar democratic system, election, human rights, women's rights, right to religion, everything. Everything you have in Israel. They build mosques in Israel. You know, you cannot build a church in Muslim country. I mean, that is where the apartheid is. That's where the true apartheid is. The apartheid between men and women. I mean, the position of women in Muslim countries, that's where apartheid is. If you look at the position of anybody who is not Muslim there, that's where apartheid is, not in Israel. I would advise people to actually, if anybody is having any doubts, go to Israel. You look at this. In fact, a lot of Muslims who actually thought that that was the case and they came to Muslim, there's such a thing, believe it or not. You can go to Google and Google Muslim Zionism, and they have Muslim Zionists. There are people who live in Britain, and I was listening to this fabulous guy. He said he was just such a much jihadist until he read this one book, was the Case for Israel. And he went to Israel. He did not believe that book. He said, you know what, I'm going to go and check it. And you can find this guy on YouTube. And he went there and he looked at it. And there's many of them, actually, you can check on Wikipedia. And so the Muslim Zionists. So what you come to, when you go there and you see it, you understand this. None of this is true. It's all lies. In fact, Israel is fighting for us, for democracy, for the Western world, for all of us to keep what we have, which we can lose. We can lose it. And you know what? While we're enjoying this on Maui, we can walk around in whatever dress code that we like. And we can put tattoos on if we like. And we can, you know, we can drink wine if we like. And we can do whatever we like. You know, if this is going to take over, we will be screwed.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. So how do you see Islam as a threat to democracy? Because of this, right?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes no hostages. Basically, it doesn't believe in negotiation, in compromise. It doesn't compromise. It must rule the world.
اليوم الذي تدوسك فيه أرجل الأقدام المسلمين الطاهرة. اللهم أحصي البوذيين والهندوس، اللهم أحصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تغادر منهم أحدا.
So we can invade their country and take their wives and war booty. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
This whole concept of Islam. And you see this more and more in Muslim countries as well. They're turning more and more. I mean, you look at Afghanistan, what it was in before Taliban came in. You can look at Iran, you can look at Sudan. You can look at Somalia. You can look at all of those countries that actually suffering millions and millions of deaths right now, and as we speak right now, there are people out there nobody's talking about. You know what? I saw this cartoon, and there's just poor black people sitting there like this, devastated, and saying it's just too bad we're not Palestinians.
No. Wow.
Yeah, it's it's horrible there. And I've seen actually a photograph of the Kurdish woman with a sign that she said that, you know, we're not fighting Israel, and that's the problem with us, because they were fighting with ISIS. Well, right now there's something done about ISIS, but it's just nothing, because it's going all over, you know, it's going all over. And I wish that people would start paying attention to that.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is coming more and more to the forefront. We covered a lot of territory today. Is there anything you feel like you want to say kind of in closing around this? Like, what's the future look like to you? What, you know, just to kind of wrap up this piece.
That's a heck of a good question. What the future looks like to me. By nature, I'm skeptic. However, I believe that life without hope is a hopeless life. So I cannot give up hope. I really can't. I do have children, and I look forward to them enjoying their life. And I believe I'm a humanitarian. I want people to enjoy their life. You know, I'm getting older, but you know, there's a lot of young people. People are born. I think that we need to hold so strongly to what we have, what we have left, from the freedom, from the whole idea of what American founding fathers started. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm a refugee. I'm a political refugee. And there are many of us that run away to places of refuge. But if the whole world becomes this one big thing, where are you going to run? Especially if it's such a totalitarian, totalist power regime when it tells you everything that you must do, and otherwise you just get beheaded or hung. I mean, where are you going to go? Where are you going to run?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Like I said, this is a hot topic. This is, you know, very powerful stuff, and you know, I'm digesting all of this, and you know, I think a lot of it just has to do with awareness. I think, for one, I'm here on Maui, and I've heard Semyon say that he moved to Maui several years ago, and that, you know, he just didn't want to think about this stuff anymore. He just didn't want to think about this stuff anymore. He just wanted to relax and enjoy life, and I'm sure he still does. He's at the beach every day. But there's an awareness. There is, I think, a conscience that we need to have, not burying our head in the sand, just being aware, because Ignorance.
Is not a bliss.
Ignorance is not bliss in this situation, or in any situation. So, thanks so much for listening today. I know that this was not the easiest subject, but digest and take it in. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today. And welcome back to the next episode of Life on Maui. And for today, aloha.
Call me crazy, but I'm never giving up my dreams. No matter how far away they seem, maybe crazy